in my head.
Have you ever been talking to somebody and all you're getting back is like this washed out blank stare, like there's a blank mind, like you're talking to a wall? If they have PTSD, we have a name for that. What you're seeing might be dissociation, but before we call it dissociation, let's talk about PTSD and what you might be seeing. So there's always the possibility that what you're seeing is somebody who's just not paying attention, who's not listening. So we don't want to just label everybody who's not paying attention to us as having some kind of mental illness. But if you know that this person has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, there's a reason why this is going on. We call this dissociation, and it's something that everybody experiences, but it happens for a particular reason for people who have post-traumatic stress disorder. Somebody who has post-traumatic stress disorder has had some kind of trauma that they've experienced, and what that means is that something has threatened their life. That's what trauma is. Now, some people can get through trauma. They have enough coping resources that they can get through without developing PTSD. Somebody who has PTSD was not able to cope with it, and so they have this disorder that has many components, but one of the things that they might experience is this dissociating. The reason that they would be experiencing dissociation is because in the moment when they experienced trauma, they had to survive, and the best way that they could was to freeze. You know, we've heard of the fight or flight response when people experience a threat. Sometimes you can't fight back, you can't run away, and you have to just kind of get through it. And so what our body does in that situation is it freezes and we dissociate. Now, what dissociation actually is we're disconnecting from our body. Our brain is actually shutting down segments of it so that we're not connecting to what's actually happening in front of us. And so we start to lose contact with our five senses. We start to feel like maybe we're not even a part of our body. Like everything we're experiencing is kind of like a movie that's happening in front of us and we're not really a part of it. And that's a way to deal with trauma so that we don't fully take in this incredibly intense, frightening experience that we're going through. So if this was a way to cope with trauma, somebody with PTSD constantly relives their trauma, and all kinds of little things could set it off. There's different triggers that might trigger a flashback, or sometimes we'll call it an emotional flashback. They don't have to be seeing what actually happened to them happening in front of them. They don't have to have a memory. They could just be experiencing irritability. They might have an outburst. They might shrink back in fear, or they could do this dissociating that we're talking about, where they kind of zone out and they're not quite present, and it's something that I've experienced myself. I've actually experienced a lot of this myself, and it took years away from my life where I wasn't fully present in the moment, able to experience what was going on in front of me. And I was so happy to have a name for it and not just think like I'm zoning out or I have this blank stare or blank mind, because I always thought, why am I always so tired? Why is this so difficult for me to comprehend what's going on? Why can't I remember things? It was the dissociation that I was experiencing. So if you have a friend or a family member who's doing this, try to keep in mind that they could be feeling really frightened in the moment, and something about what's going on made them have to disconnect from the conversation or from what's happening around them. Now, they still know you're there. They can still kind of like hear the conversation a little bit, unless they have full dissociative amnesia. But in my case, what I experienced, I could actually hear everybody. I could have a conversation with you. It's just that I wasn't totally connected to the conversation, and I might need you to repeat things. I might maybe give an answer that doesn't seem quite right because I didn't quite hear what you were saying in the first place. And if you were to ask me what I was feeling, I would probably just say I'm feeling a little tired, I'm feeling a little bit out of it, but I wouldn't realize that I was feeling threatened. Now, if you want to help somebody in the moment while they're doing this, you'll probably want to get their attention, bring them back into the moment, but don't be rude about it. Don't be like, you're not paying attention to me, hello, and wave your hand in front of them or anything. Just ask them how they're feeling. Maybe take the conversation away for a moment and get to asking them really how they're feeling and like what are you experiencing right now. You know, maybe getting them to tune into the environment and to see what's around you. Give them some like sensory experiences, maybe something to eat, maybe something to smell, just to get them back here and present now, and remind them that they're safe. Remind them that you're here to listen to them, that they're okay, and give them that sense of security that will help them kind of like snap out of it. But also keep in mind that people don't just snap out of dissociation for the most part. It's usually a gradual process. It takes some time. It's kind of like a gradient. Like when I came out of a deep dissociation, sometimes it would take me a day to get fully out of it. Kind of like when you wake up from a really groggy sleep and it takes you like a couple of hours to get out of it. It's that kind of a feeling. And if you really want an idea of what it feels like, dissociation we typically experience when we're in a car and we're driving somewhere and we get to our destination and we're like, I don't remember the time in between. I don't remember fully being present in the car. Or maybe you've been driving and like all of a sudden something went in front of the car and it like snapped you back into reality because you weren't fully there in the moment. It's that kind of a fuzzy feeling. It really feels very fuzzy for me anyway, like I'm not fully here. And if you're the person who's doing the dissociating, know that it's okay. It's normal. It's a normal reaction to the trauma that you went through. People freeze, it's all right. And the PTSD is what's making you do it. So of course, go in to see a therapist to treat your trauma if you aren't already, and make sure you're seeing a trauma specialist who understands trauma. But know that this is something that can go away. It's something that you can work on, and it's not the way that you're going to live your life forever. Not every conversation has to have you with a blank stare and feeling that blank mind. If you want to learn more about your own mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty and hit subscribe to get notified of all of my videos. And if you want to support me on my mission of humanizing mental health, head on over to Patreon. You can support me over there. I'll put the links below this video. And now I'd love to hear from you. If you're somebody who's got this blank stare, this PTSD dissociation thing going on, what has it been like for you? What kind of tips would you give for people who maybe have a family member or a friend who's going through this? Let us know in the comments down below. We can discuss it and learn from each other. Thanks for joining me, everybody.